Healthy soils are fundamental for healthy farming systems, and there are many ways of checking the health of your soils. Sometimes it is just as simple as knowing what to look for as you walk across your paddock. This video is the first in a series of 3 that condenses years of agronomy experience down into some easy to use strategies. This first video will help you identify 5 common signs you might see in a paddock so you can begin to interpret the underlying problem and come up with a management strategy. We'll take a look at what it can mean if you see 1. Dark green urine patches and paler green surrounding pasture. 2. Increased pasture growth around dung. 3. Yellowing or paler green pastures. 4. Increased growth and high fertility weeds around stock camps. And 5. Patchy growth. First up, if when walking across a paddock you see dark green patches of high grass growth and the rest of the paddock is paler green with shorter growth, then it is likely that these are urine patches. Urine contains high amounts of nitrogen, potassium and some sulfur, so those nutrients have all been concentrated in the one place. These are the soil test results of macronutrients taken within the urine patches and then the remainder of the paddock. We can see that the urine patches have much higher levels of nitrogen, potassium and sulfur. In this sheep paddock, the response is likely to be from nitrogen as the level of the other nutrients are above critical values needed for growth. Secondly, and similarly, if you see increased pasture growth around manure pats and shorter paler growth elsewhere, this can also be a sign of nutrient deficiency. Unlike urine patches though, dung also contains phosphorus. This is the soil test results of main nutrients taken within and under cow pats. We can see that the phosphorus level is higher, but in this case the response is likely to be from potassium as it is below the level needed for adequate growth. These patches of increased growth could also indicate selective grazing, as stock avoid pasture near dung while odour remains, which can be up to 3 months. The best time to look for these symptoms of nutrient deficiency are late winter and early spring. At this time, early season potassium, nitrogen and sulfur may have been used up or lost due to wet conditions, and nutrient demand by plants is increasing. These observations can be confirmed by taking soil tests. Ideally, you want to avoid taking samples from the urine or dung patches as the nutrients within them will give you a false impression that there may be no nutrient constraints. This can then inform the amount of fertiliser that is needed to meet the critical levels required by pastures to reach optimal pasture growth and production. Another way of checking for soil nutrient deficiencies is putting out test strips of potassium, nitrogen and sulphur fertiliser. If you are interested in finding out more about designing fertiliser test strips, there is a link in the information below to a relevant fact sheet. Sometimes pastures will look yellow or pale green across the whole paddock or in large areas, and this could be due to a few reasons. It might be a deficiency in potassium, nitrogen or sulfur, or trace elements like molybdenum, in which cases look out for the darker green patches where nutrients are concentrated in urine and dung. It could be a sign of waterlogging. Waterlogging impacts a plant's ability to take up nutrients, particularly nitrogen, which can lead to yellowing. Pasture nitrogen is hard to get an accurate reading on, as our sampling to analysis time tends to be long and the nitrate can change into a gas and be lost during that time. Yellowing early in the season sometimes goes away by spring, when nitrogen mineralisation peaks. But if you are seeing signs of nitrogen deficiency into the middle of spring, then low nitrogen levels should be investigated. It could also be the winter grass that has begun flowering that is making the pastures look paler green or yellow. Or it might be plants that are dying off because of pathogen attack, such as red-headed cockchafers attack on plant roots. Or onion grass infected with brown spots from Helminthosporium fungus. The best time to look for yellowing pastures is in late winter to spring, when plants are reaching maximum nutrient demand. If it is a nutrient problem, you are likely to see an abundance of low fertility weeds, such as onion grass, silvergrass and sorrel, and an absence of high fertility weeds like capeweed, barleygrass and marshmallow. You can confirm if it is a deficit of a macronutrient like potassium, phosphorus or sulfur with a soil test. If you think it might be a micronutrient, particularly molybdenum, then you can take tissue tests from plants in the paddock. You can tell a lot by noting the types of plants growing around stock camps and comparing it to the rest of the paddock. Nutrients are concentrated in the areas where stock congregate and you're likely to see more high fertility weeds as a result. This is a sign that nutrients are being transported around the farm and unequally redistributed, leaving some areas in a deficit and others with an abundance. This can be observed any time throughout the growing season. An effective visual test is to compare the size of fully emerged leaf blades from the same grass species selected from inside a stock camp area to ones from the rest of the paddock. Adequate nutrition doesn't grow more leaves per tiller, it just grows fatter leaves. Something else to keep an eye out for is patchy growth areas, or plants dying out that had previously established. These areas are always worth investigating and trying to work out the reasons for the poor growth. Lucerne in this paddock started to die out in patches 3 months after establishment. In this case, it was soil acidity and aluminium toxicity as a result of low pH that caused plant death. Testing the poor areas at 0 to 10 centimetres indicated the soil pH using the calcium chloride test wasn't too bad at 4.9. But Lucerne prefers pH to be at least 5.5. Testing in 5 centimetre increments showed the surface applied lime was still sitting at the top of the soil and the soil was still strongly acid below it. When trying to diagnose soil acidity constraints, it's recommended to sample at 0 to 10 centimetres, 10 to 20 centimetres and 20 to 30 centimetres. Now you're all set to go and start interpreting the colours and patterns you might see across your pasture paddocks. So much can be understood about the health of your soils and pastures by just paying attention to whether you're seeing any of these things. 1. Dark green urine patches showing up on a paler green pasture. 2. Increased pasture growth around dung. 3. Yellowing or paler green pastures across large areas. 4. Increased growth and more high fertility weeds around stock camps. And 5. Patchy growth. For more information on how to better understand and manage soil health in your pasture paddocks, please check out the links below.